Hello and welcome to the CTN webinar. The topic for today is steps to practical, predictable, and scalable mobile-centric end user experience. And thanks so much, Signity and Kobiton, for helping us put this together and sponsoring this. I am Sanjog Aul, your moderator today. I'm from CTN, that is CIO Talk Network. So the idea here is to discuss about things which people are trying to do in this new and ever-growing mobile ecosystem, and we are trying to put the applications, etc., out there. How would you build an experience so that mobile users keep coming back, keep using it, and stay loyal to you? With all of that said, and we will get into more details, we would like to first start with a question. And question will be, of course, for the panelists, and audience members can also chime in. If you were to build your career as an artist, which type of art would you pick?
I want to say ladies first.
I am happy to jump in. I would absolutely make a career as an animation artist. And that's because I think it's a wonderful way to tell stories that is only constrained by your imagination. So being able to tell stories and enjoy the beauty of the animation is something that I've always aspired to.
That's great. Who else? Anybody else wants to be an artist? A secret dream of sorts?
I'll go short films that would fit within TikTok.
Oh, so you want to
animated,
be like
animated.
Anyway, so she's going to put herself in there. You get a gig out of it, right, Lori?
Yeah.
So, all right. So the reason I bring this up, because see, when you try to look at an artist, what does an artist do? They dream, then they keep practicing their craft, and they do it for the love of it. And the goal is that they achieve mastery in it, if they could at least strive for it, to create an experience for others. I was trying to make a way to connect what we are trying to do for these individuals who are end users, and we are trying to be the people who are providing that mobile-centric experiences. We almost have to, while yeah, there would be a science involved in it, but we almost have to start thinking about it as an art form. And that's why if that artist meets a scientist, maybe that would be the recipe. But essentially, what are we dealing with? Based on the conversations we've had, we have seen people talk about them not being able to understand, or they have tough time understanding what's the current requirement from the user and how is that morphing. They do not always have a clear idea about where the user would come from, and then how much like what kind of device they're going to use, which platform they're going to use. And then mobile device doesn't by itself give the experience, it's your infrastructure, the architecture, and all of that. So you are going into a place where the user is going to be demanding, going to be fickle, and going to be looking for ways to use your experience that you provide. But if they do not like, if their own benchmark is not met, they will be very easy to complain and very easy to defect. But so how do we handle this? So for that, I have a bunch of professional artists, select ones though. So I will just go through them. Laura Moni, Chief Information Officer from Sun Life. Hey, Laura, how are you? I like your animation one. I'm going to take you up on that one. And we have Vince Kellen. So Vince, did you say you wanted to become a TikTok artist? Right?
Short films.
Short films. Okay.
Yeah, but that's
all
what
right.
TikTok now is.
TikTok. Okay, there you go. I'll remember you with that. So Raghu, I didn't hear from you. Any art form?
Painting.
Painting. All right. Arif. So Raghu Kravedi is the President and Global Delivery Head for Signity Technologies. And Arif Martin, Chief Technology Officer with Wiley. Arif, what's your art?
So I recently attended the Van Gogh Digital Museum animation, as well as fact and fiction. art, which I really, really enjoyed, right? How different types of art have been combined to really provide a digital experience there. That was really phenomenal. I like that.
All right. So then we have, so Arif Martin, Chief Technology Officer for Wiley, and then Chris Panagio Topoulos. He is the Chief Technology Officer with LiveBridge Health. Hey, Chris, what's your art form?
Hey, Sanjay, thank you. Closet guitar player. So in my earlier years, I loved playing guitar, music. Would have loved to be able to continue that. So that would have been my art form.
All right, all right. So let's quickly go through the approach we will take. This is like a workshop. So we'll have each of the panel members will speak, or rather share their top challenge which prevents them from delivering a practical, predictable, and scalable mobile-centric user experience. And then we'll also ask the audience members if they have to share any. And then we go back to the solutioning, where each of the panelists will share what they have done to try to solve those top challenges. And then each of the panel members will chime in to give advice to each other to see how they can get over the hump that they are currently facing, or the snag that is hitting, which is preventing them to fully cure this problem. And audience members are more than welcome to use chat and or even request to be unmuted so we can bring you into the mix. So with that said, let us start with you, Laura. Go ahead and share. Try to keep it around 2 minutes. A quick background about your organization, of course, yourself, and the top challenge that you're facing. Give us some context of that challenge too.
Sure. Thanks so much. Laura Money, I'm CEO of Sun Life, and I've worked for about 30 years across the US, UK, and Canada in a variety of technology roles and consulting. But for the past 20-ish years as an executive at 3 different financial institutions. Sun Life is a leading financial services company that helps our client achieve lifetime financial security and live healthier lives. We're focused primarily in wealth, health, and life. So, you know, there are a number of things that are holding us back in terms of mobile user experience. And I really think about it in 3 big categories. So bear with me for a minute, and then I'll focus in on the one that is maybe of the most concern. We've been on a mobile client-centric journey for a while. We launched our first app well over 10 years ago. In the preview, when we were just chatting among the panel, I talked a little bit about a more recent app that we launched, which is Lumino Health. So it's a health services app, and it does include telehealth. So hopefully Chris and I will get into that a little bit later. But there's these mobile apps take a lot of design work. And as everybody knows, talent in the tech industry is really at a premium now. It's really, truly a war on talent like I've never seen in the 30 years that I've worked in this space. And it is a real challenge, not just on the tech side, but getting good designers who will work in this space, really bring some of that design thinking into our working. Now, underpinning any great design, obviously, you need a modern tech stack that is going to enable you to even build these kinds of experiences that the designers could dream about, as you say. And so, like many organizations, we've got legacy technologies that sometimes constrain how fast we've got to do, how fast we can really get to things, and how much it costs to do the things that we might want to do. And then even beyond that, the third category is really how technology and business folks really work together. And can we get out of our real, you know, nobody I think builds an app anymore in a waterfall way, but some of the agile that we say we're doing isn't really very mature. And so can we really mature the way we're working together to have those quick, client-focused, design-led releases on a regular basis? I want to go daily. My team's not quite there yet, but we're working on it.
All right. Hey, Vince, what's up there at your end?
Well, being CIO here at UC San Diego, we're about 43,000 students, and then probably another 50, 60,000 we call extension students who aren't pursuing degrees. So the number one thing for us has been the response to COVID, and how COVID has scrambled the classroom between home and the dorm, and a little bit back and forth, especially in the last year. So the students are really consuming a ton of content, educational and other, from all sorts of different environments than we have historically, been used to. So we used a phrase last year, the dorm is the new classroom. Students are coming to the dorms but taking their classes remotely because they're not allowed in the classroom. And so that's been, sort of an infrastructure challenge on just getting wireless services to the mobile devices, and knowing that across our campus, students are moving in different spots they never moved. But on the other side, because we have so many students and we have so many engineering students, we find that we use our student workers as mobile developers, and they're as good as the consultants that are out there. And so we've got them, Laura. So if you want them, just call. But it is a war on talent, so we've been forced to use our student population. I can go more into that and how we do that. Rembrandt studio model, to borrow this artistic metaphor, that's actually a phrase we use for describing how we try to produce our mobile experiences in software.
All right. So yeah, we'll definitely talk about that on the solutions side of things. So Chris, why don't you share your journey and challenge, the top one?
Love to. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Chris Panchtopoulos. I'm the Vice President and CTO for LifeBridge Health. We are a $2 billion a year healthcare organization based in Maryland. As you can imagine, having to serve and operate a number of hospital systems in Maryland, the last 2 years has been a little bit of a challenge for us. We've been pretty busy between having our hospitals completely filled with patients, having emergency situations, needing to pivot and send hundreds, if not thousands, of our employees to work from home. And also, how do we engage with our patients? We told our patients, don't come to the office anymore. It's not safe for you. Lock down, stay safe, but they still need healthcare. Our challenges, and I described the last 2 years as pivot, overcome, and in some cases, we've thrived. We had to pivot, send a number of our employees home. In a healthcare environment, the traditional healthcare environment is you're physically on site. You're there at the hospital, you're supporting your IT staff. Now we had to shift everybody home. And we put some measures in place to do that as an interim basis. We all felt this was going to be over soon. And we went from it's going to be over soon to now this is going to be more long-term. And we need to have an infrastructure and technology that's secure and mobile and now adapts to the needs. Not only are staff working from home, but they are moving around. Some move to other states to take advantage of this opportunity. Also, from a customer perspective, now we were telling them this thing called telehealth. We're going to send you this notification with an app, and you're going to meet with your provider that way. And now I have to download this app to my phone. And now what do I do? And how do I have to do this? So those were all very unique and interesting challenges we've had to overcome, and still working on a number of them on both fronts.
Arif?
Yeah, not unsimilar, right? Our audience, researchers, learners, administrators, people that are looking to make sure that they learn to get a better job. And this audience used to be in classrooms, in communities, one-on-one training types of things, and COVID really did a number on this part of the industry. Everybody decided to go online and stay at home and stay safe and conduct their business. This kind of interested a very clear opportunity for us to really strengthen our mobile portfolio of capabilities. And it also presented us with specific challenges such as how do we support a global audience, right? Because our audience is everywhere, in every research institution in the world, in every university in the world, and in pursuit of careers anywhere in the world. So this was interesting. How do we really kind of basically get to a point where we define a common denominator to create applications, to build a consistent user experience, and I use user experience in the bigger scope of things and not just what's happening on the screen there. Overall user experience on performance, availability, security, et cetera, and allow others to build better user interface into on top of our applications, so that things will become much better, much simpler for everyone to operate in their markets. And in addition to this type of a challenge, we have other major issue, which is the nature of our business is really delivery of our content and worldwide. And how do we do this seamlessly so that the experience of discovery and learning from anywhere in the world is seamless to the users, regardless of where they're sitting and regardless where the content is being served. And that's been quite an interesting journey for us over the past couple of years.
So Raghu, you've heard all the leaders who are on this panel, and you have been, and your organization has been in some form or fashion working with them, learning their problems, and just kind of wear a hat of an analyst almost, right? You've been around the block, talk to them. What you're hearing from them and what you are seeing out there, how much of a similarity do you see, and what more do you see? What will complete the picture, if you will?
It's a good question, Sanjog. Yeah, I think understandably, and before I answer that, I think I really like the way that you started off this session when you said, what is it that you want to pursue as an artist? Because digital transformation is definitely not only a science. It's a combination of science and art. Because at the end of the day, the end consumer in the marketplace is not an engineer. He's a consumer in his realm of space. So he has an emotional connection to the experience. So therefore, there is definitely an art component to this overall digital transformation that all of us are trying to do. Having said that, you're right. I mean, most of what my colleagues said today is definitely a subset of challenges that we are hearing. But if I broadly break the entire cycle into three parts, when we set to build a mobile app with a certain level of digital experience that we have as a goal to deliver, I think that's the first piece of the puzzle, right? You have to get that right. That's category one. And if I, for lack of a better nomenclature, call it vision, the digital experience vision that you want to give to your end client, then how do you progress from that vision to delivering value eventually to the consumer, which is the second part. So the first is vision, the second is vision to value. And the third is now, once you've delivered value, you start getting feedback from the end consumer directly or indirectly, the social channels, right? So how do you feed back that value back into your vision and improvise it? So if I broadly break this journey into these three parts, I think some of the organizations have done a great job in being able to articulate a digital experience vision for their end customers. Like Chris was talking before our chat, saying that they were trying to put a digital strategy, right, in terms of experience strategy. I think a lot of them are able to get the first version to near to what they would like to deliver. And I think the feedback loop from the delivered value back into the vision, also we are seeing a lot of our customers are eagerly looking at what feedback is coming in the marketplace. How do I pipe it back into my SDLC overall? I think in these two parts, 1 and 3, there is enough attention and enough curiosity to ensure that it's going on well. But if you look at the second part, which is vision to value, that's where I think a lot of challenges that most of our customers are also facing, which part of them my colleagues just also outlined. Now, if we have to look at that piece, which is the longest journey when you deliver it for the first time, I think there is a people aspect to it in terms of skills, their availability and expense, the ability to design and architect, because your vision needs to eventually convert itself into something tangible. So skill is definitely one broad category. Then the process and methodology that you use to actually drive this vision into value. How do you how do you put your teams on the ground? We heard Laura say that she's looking at pushing to release to once a day. So for that, you need very nimble, agile, and yet compliant to a certain methodology sort of teams. You need to be compliant where you need to be, and you need to be flexible where you need to be, right? So and also the metrics that you use to measure how you are inching towards that experience that you want to render to your customer, right? So that's the piece that constitutes overall process and methodology. And the last piece is, of course, infrastructure. And when I say infrastructure, I mean how much of a real-time enabled infrastructure you're able to provide throughout these SDLC, so that you are able to experience potentially what your end consumer is about to experience while going through the SDLC, right? So across these three pockets in that vision to value journey, we are seeing clients facing challenges, Sanjog.
Thank you so much. So this is great, a set of challenges. So very quickly, anyone from the audience members who wants to just chat their top challenge, please feel free to do so. We will continue in the solutions discussion, but we would like to take those up or any other questions that you may have. So that said, so Raghu, when you said vision to value, right? I was talking to someone recently, and they said, by the way, between vision and value comes another V, which is called vicious, because it becomes brutal sometimes before the value is actually seen. So Laura, coming to you, since you mentioned you got a couple of different challenges, right? Let's take one of them. And let's look at what you tried doing, because you knew this was a challenge, and yeah, you can work at it. What did you do? What worked? What did not work? What's the learning? And where is still that struggle where all of us could kind of jump in and see if we can help you move forward?
Sure. Well, why don't we just focus on that upfront design piece and just having the talented designers who can actually work with our end users to design that great experience, and who can also work with our developers and the internal teams to make it come alive. So there's a few challenges there. One is a pure talent one, but the other one is that the teams aren't used to working in a design-oriented way with true, I'll call them artists, because really they go through a very structured process, designers, but they really are artists. And there's some very specific things when you think about mobile that you have to be very wary of, right? You have to realize if somebody's, and I'm going to use the mobile device, if someone's on a mobile device, we know that within a minute, they're going to get it, on average, they're going to get a text, email, some kind of alert. They're going to be interrupted. So you can't count on them having a very long attention span. You need to make sure that they also might get disconnected. So you need to make sure whatever they're doing is saved and they can come back to it. There's also, helping the client or the user understand how many steps are there? How long is this going to take? Can we do each one of these steps in a way where they can complete something before they're likely to be interrupted? So having designers who understand the inherent constraints of a mobile experience, working effectively with the internal development and business teams to create a wonderful experience, that's all a challenge on a number of levels. So what have we done? We've really started to educate the organization on how important the design is and how important it is to really co-create with our clients, co-create all along the way. And even when you're co-creating, one of the things we found is our clients, I think this is true of everybody's clients, what they say they're going to do when you do the focus groups and you do the mock-ups is different than what they do when you actually deploy something into production and it's in use. So you have to have many touch points with the clients, and then even when it's deployed, that A/B testing that we all love is a super important technique to make sure that you're actually getting the experience you want. And then it's a change management journey for those designers to actually work with the teams and not just have, you know, some smart person at head office say this is how the mobile team should work, but actually a designer who's immersed in the client experience. So there's cultural challenges, there's getting talent challenges, and then there's just the mechanistic methodology challenges, and how do you keep the client engaged and make sure you're designing the best possible experience from vision to value, as you guys are talking about.
Okay, go ahead.
At this point,
Yes.
I think Laura is nailed it right there, right? So this is an important issue because of the fact that that design part is really important, and getting businesses and business development processes to really kind of start thinking about the design of a mobile app is a big challenge, right? This is I would say by far the biggest area of concern, but there's another area which is kind of somewhat related, is the current generation of mobile apps have architectural patterns that are still based on assumptions of technology, stated technology 3, 4, 5 years ago. And the architectural patterns have changed. What does that mean, right? There's this area referred to as edge computing, right? That using edge computing type technologies for mobile will allow the users to shift a lot of the feature functionality that would usually show up inside the mobile application away and into a public cloud network, so that the application doesn't have to be continuously more and more sophisticated. The application can be simplified while the cloud is doing a major part of the application. But this separation and really kind of taking advantage of the newer technologies that are coming out in this can help really simplify the user experience related issues that people are struggling. And the best applications that you see out there today, when you compare the mobile app versus what's on the web for the same application, you will see that many of the features that are on the web do not really show up in television, right? And for doing certain things, you have to go to the web to simplify and keep the UX and UI much simpler on the mobile app. And now talk about edge computing, shift a lot of the functionality that's happening traditionally in the mobile app to the cloud. You will help significantly simplify the user experience.
Okay.
And
If
Go
I could-
ahead.
and just so, Chris, go ahead. I'll do
I would
after.
say I really like the vision to value and the viciousness in the middle. I think with Sanjay and we tend to create what I call user vicious application versus user intuitive. And to Laura's point, when you have engineers who think in a very structural manner, it's step, 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 step. They design it in such a way that's intuitive to them. However, when you look at your user, and I think Laura said very good, within a minute, you're going to get a number of interruptions on your mobile device. So if you've got an experience where I've got to download an app and I've got to figure out and take a long time to figure out and maneuver how I'm going to go through it, to me, that's a user vicious experience versus user intuitive. That's been one of, I think, our challenges. We realize mobility is here. We're trying to adapt to it. We're trying to get something quickly out there. And the artistry you talked about earlier, and I like that analogy, in the fact that we design like engineers or technical people, and we need to design in mind that this has to be not friendly, because what may be user-friendly for me is not user-friendly for somebody else. My wife tells me all the time, it's like when I look at something, I say, oh, it's easy like this and this and this, and she goes, well, you get it, but that's not my world. That's not as friendly to me. So something that's user-intuitive, and that's where I think the struggle is, because we're trying to rush to adapt now to a consumer. Vince is probably the opposite, because the consumer is pushing him. He's got that digital native audience, where we have, in many cases, digital native and digital immigrants. I'm a digital immigrant. I didn't grow up with this technology. I had to adopt to it. I think somebody may have mentioned earlier, Here I've got young male sons who they're teaching me sometimes. What do you mean, Dad? You don't know this? You're in IT, but it's a different world and how you have to adapt. And I'd love to share a little bit the experience we talked about with Laura earlier with telehealth, how she was able to adapt with her daughter. And that was exactly what telehealth was intended to bring, the ability of convenience. I can't get to a hospital. I need to talk to somebody. Is this urgent? Can they give me meds? And the experience she shared is exactly from a health perspective we want to hear, but we know as a consumer now, Laura and many like her are going to expect more. And that's where we're trying to figure how we take that vision of that more to value and try to bypass that viciousness.
All right. So Raghu, you have a comment before we go to Vince, yeah?
Yeah. So I was just agreeing to what Laura said. I think this design, the whole concept of design, I think is relatively new in terms of how the workforces are adopting to it. The whole design thinking. So Laura, what we try to do in our organization, at least, and you would agree, being a services company, we have a workforce that potentially is talking to hundreds of clients, right, in parallel. So at least from our side, what we did is to generally up the levels of design thinking adoption and being part of that interpretation. Whichever internal apps we develop for our own organization, be it a new HR mobile app, or be it a new project management office app, or resource management, whatever those apps are, we have ensured that our employees who are engineers, and like Sanjog was saying, we look at what hobbies they have and try to assemble a bunch of people, put those employees as part of that application development itself. Whether it is, even if we are buying a commercial off-the-shelf product, we do ensure that these guys become a part of that work group, and then the whole design thinking piece in terms of asking for what features they would like, or how do they like to see those features on the screen, and bring in that user friendliness interpretation of what the end consumer, in this case employees, are. And that has helped us generally increase adoption to an overarching design-based thinking.
Vince, you mentioned talent, and then you said you even is churning out talent or spawning talent because you're an educational institution. Would you say you're going to be finding your own medicine by doing so, or is there still gap which of course you said there is a gap, the talent gap and the other things you mentioned. Is there something you did which you can say, talking 2023, we did the same discussion again, you'd say this no longer is a problem for you?
Yeah, I mean, it was a problem in years past and hasn't been recently, and here's why. One, there's always been a talent shortage for mobile. We've known that for a long time. Two, we've got a lot of students. So we've sort of put together what we call a Rembrandt Studio model, where we have a full-time staff, a person who's really good at designing experiences mobile. And that person works as kind of Rembrandt, sketching out the larger design. And then we have an army of students who come in and help fill in. That's how Rembrandt mass produced a lot of his paintings. And so the students come in and take the design patterns and adopt them. We found that student labor is as good as what we can get in the market from a consultant. They're young, they're hungry, they're well skilled, they're very smart. They're also really kind of mobile savvy. So they kind of have their own intuitive sense of what they think that experience ought to look like. So that's been working certainly very well for us. I think the other half of this equation is, mobile's sort of like this surface layer sitting on top of a whole lot of infrastructure. And all of that infrastructure has to be inclined and leaning into mobile in a big way. So I look at the CIO as kind of this organizational and technical integration artist that has to deliver useful and at times compelling digital experiences in the mobile world. So part of my job is to get all layers of that architecture lined up. So all of our enterprise architecture now is in the cloud. That's been a 5-year journey. Our enterprise system architecture, so all of our core transaction systems, whether it be student, financial, or research or whatever, We've got a very strong integration layer we call our iPaaS stack that's completely in the cloud. We have a very high-speed what I call next generation 21st century analytical environment based on SAP HANA. That's in the cloud. And then we have our institutional sort of API layer around all of that. So the mobile gets full benefit to virtually any bit of data or any transaction anywhere in our environment. And on top of that, our data warehouse architecture is what I call now synaptically ontologically congruent, meaning all of the data is conceived in the whole, and all of it aligns with each other, can be linked and joined with each other through common identifiers, and is coherent. That's the viciousness underneath mobile that enables those mobile experiences. So it's like, when you see the mobile experience coming out in your device, that's like 1/100th of the puzzle. The other 99 parts of the puzzle is that full stack and the organizational alignment around that full stack.
Vince, I think you make an excellent point, and these are all interrelated, because without that stack, you can't create those experiences without a modern stack. And you also can't attract the talent. And the students that you're working with, when they graduate, you're spoiling them, because they're going to go into industry, and not everybody's going to be as advanced as you are with everything in the cloud. But absolutely, we're finding that the top talent and students are not interested in working with legacy technologies, and so the faster we can modernize our full stack, the better off we'll be. Not just because it's going to be more flexible, but because we'll be able to attract even more talent. So it's a little bit of a vicious circle as well.
Yeah, and I think the comment that the half-life of mobile software architecture is short, that's a very fair one. I mean, software evaporates over time, anywhere from 30 years for big-scale enterprise systems to maybe 4 years for mobile. Recognizing the different half-life to the design patterns and the architectures is important. And then building our shop floors, meaning how we manufacture this stuff internally in our units, to respect those different half-lives is very important.
So Chris, coming to you, you did mention about your ecosystem and the kind of challenges. To the point that Vince is making, that there is 99% of viciousness to give the 1% of the value. I mean, if you were to go with that. When you're trying to solve your problem, nobody would want to keep viciousness, and you don't want your team to come and kill you because you're trying to give great mobile experience. You want to give them a life too. What are you doing in your journey to go from vision to value and viciousness in between, so that the viciousness percentage reduces and the outcome increases in value? What have you done to that end?
Yeah, well, that's the big question, right? And where we're coming from is a position where we have a number of ways that patients can interact. And what we've created is what I call kind of this spaghetti system. Is there's system 1, 2, 3, or 4, depending on what you're trying to accomplish, whether it's a televisit, making an appointment, trying to search for a doc, trying to access your portal for your health information. So the information is there, and if you look at it from a patient perspective, we say it's there, but the challenge is, how do I get to it? And taking that vision to value and trying to avoid the viciousness, I think we are in the viciousness, to be frank. We're there right now. And what we're trying to do from an overall digital strategy, a consumer strategy, is how do you combine all of this with what I call a white label app, that a customer only sees one app, one way to get all of that, and you architect that stuff in the background so it's invisible to the patient. To Vince's point, when you develop these stacks over time, the technical challenge is now how are you going to integrate all this information, and having the talent and the right people to be able to do that has been a challenge. Getting the resources dedicated to that has been a challenge from a healthcare perspective, because especially over the last 2 years, given some of the prioritization of really being very tactical. In essence, for about a year or so, most healthcare systems had to pivot from strategy to being very tactical and making sure that we were supporting the hospitals and patients in turn. As we're hopefully starting to see at some point, we're coming out of this pandemic, the focus is, okay, how do I take this situation we've created to interact with our patients and make it a lot easier. Really, the challenge in Laura stated is resources, the right people, the investments, and the demographics. We have a demographic, our patient demographic, as I mentioned earlier, are from those who are very digital natives and very comfortable with technology. And we're seeing now more so the millennials are really driving this, where the expectation is, I will be able to get my health care through an app. I will be able to interact with my primary care provider through an app. I don't need to go into an office. I don't want to deal with email with you have your geriatric patients or your senior citizens who are typically dependent on the millennials and others to help them, guide them through that experience. So we've got our challenges, but I'm very encouraged. I think the opportunity that COVID brought, I was responsible for helping set up the telehealth program in our organization back in 2016. And we did it very well internally, but we had a difficult time with consumer adoption. And good, bad, or indifferent, COVID brought that consumer adoption whether people wanted it. And now the expectation is not only do I want it, but I expect more.
So, Arif, you mentioned when Laura had mentioned about the challenges that she was facing, and then you brought things like edge computing, etc. So, would you say that this is now a project for you where you know where the bottlenecks are and you put a good architecture in place, like you mentioned, you stressed an architecture, or there is something more that you need to crack, more problems that you need to crack?
Yeah, there's a little bit of background noise beyond my control here, yeah, I think that the architectural patterns are very critical. The systems and the databases in the background that Chris was describing, the stack, the so-called stack that Chris was describing, are pretty much following the previous generation architectural pattern, and that pattern is changing fast. And especially if you have applications that really need to kind of be globally accessed, they have to really start adopting newer technologies. Otherwise, many of these applications will not deliver the user experience that you want, right? And again, user experience, the bigger user experience, right? Less than 3-second response time, right? Making sure that you provide capability to do solid streaming cable, right, of video. Being able to start your application someplace on a device, finish your application work someplace else on another device. Being able to do work offline, and being able to upload it automatically. Being able to switch context and switch location during the application, right? Many of you have noticed, right, in a Zoom conference or a Microsoft Teams conference, you have the ability to switch from one device to another device as you go from location to location. Wouldn't it be nice if your location was detected and automatically you get requests on your mobile device saying that, okay, well, now do you want to switch to this, instead of me going into the Microsoft Teams application and starting the meeting again and go through the routine again to set it up on my mobile device, right? Artificial intelligence, tying into locations, and really making sure that your application functions holistically with a common user experience based on new architectural patterns, I think is the next set of challenges, right, that this industry is going to have to take advantage of.
So, Raghu, I have this question which, based on all the different feedback that was given, starting from talking talent to creating a good design, to creating the good architecture, then creating the good code, if you will, for the mobile devices. And all of that culminates into a couple of seconds which make or break your perception about your app and adaptability. There's way too much writing. And then there is a so-called assurance somebody would like before making an investment, or after they made investments, they would like to know before they, you will not fire and then aim, if you will, right? Or you will aim and then perhaps test it a little bit and then fire because you don't have the choice. How on earth can someone do that when Laura says, I have to get this good design made, and once you make the design, then there's a lot of coding to be done, and then users will not always tell what they want, like in the way they would really use the system, and if there is any delta there, that will get passed along.
Yep.
So how do you create this end-to-end assurance, if you will, of this so that the end experience across devices, across platforms, across use cases stays consistent, because that's what we call as a brand,
Yeah.
a reliable brand. What have you seen people do to that end?
Great question, Sanjog. And just to borrow your line of aim and fire, I think this is now about hitting the bullseye on a moving target, right? So that's how complicated it is. Coming back to the assurance piece, I'll take a step back. Maybe 5-6 years back, when performance, security, these kind of issues were important from an assurance standpoint. Generally, if you had to test your application, you would do your functional test and then a non-functional test and then whatever pre-prod readiness test and then a deployment test. That was the sequence. And as we did a left shift paradigm in the SDLC space, we said we can't do that sequentially. Of course, there are some parts of those tests that have to be done towards the production stage, but while the code is getting developed, you need to look at functionality, non-functionality, and several aspects of how the application will get used and is supposed to deliver what it is supposed to deliver. I think we have to apply the same thing for experience. I think when developers write their code, probably they have requirements in mind and potentially have defects that they know have crept in or are likely to creep in, right? So when testers are testing the code, they are looking at, again, compliance to requirements and can they spot a defect. I think we have to change the thinking across the SDLC of all the people who participate to also think about experience in as much as they think about functionality and non-functionality. So to be able to do that, we should offer a platform of sorts or a framework that will allow them to see and measure, if not see, to be able to measure potentially how they are inching towards that end experience that they have set for themselves. So what we have done, at least in the last 18 to 24 months, and more so in the last 18 months, is we have broken the entire experience journey from vision to value in 3 parts. One is, we call it as pre-experience, which means you should be able to predict what is likely to be the experience of a potential end consumer while the code is getting built, tested, and about to get deployed. And the moment it is deployed in production, then from pre-experience, it becomes a live experience, right? Runtime monitoring of the experience. And once the consumer has used the application, then he or she is going to throw a lot of feedback, or maybe there's a lot of data in their devices that we could look at to know what potential problems have occurred to that consumer, and then feed it back to the vision that we spoke about, and that we call it as post-experience. So we have put together a data and analytics platform along with some prescriptive do's and don'ts, and also some prediction components that almost like, it's like a code profiling tool that tells you potentially where the defects are, right? So though we are not yet mature to that level, I would say we have been able to put together a 3-phase component-based platform that tells how your experience is getting built. And I think as long as we measure this metric, and this experience could be, as Arif was saying, your potential page loading time, right? Could be one aspect of it. But there are several data components that fit together to define this experience measurement. And as long as we put that metrics framework underlying and measure it right from the word go of defining a requirement, and as it progresses into engineering and deployment, and see what's the experience index is like, then I think it will be a robust way to at least provide a assurance mirror to the entire team, as for them to know how they have inched towards the experience goal.
Hey, Sanjog, I got 15 seconds of just comment on your initial question. And I remind people the most profound business propositions are the most vague. And business development, value development is not a waterfall methodology. So it's not aim and fire. It's explore, fail, learn, and adjust faster.
Yeah.
So that's what we have to do to our business, is learn how to get to agile business development, especially in the mobile realm.
I totally see that. So Vince, my concern is that at any point while you're making the next iteration or what you're working with the mobile person, a lot of money has been spent, blood, sweat, and tears has been put in, and then mobile users very quickly shoot it down.
Well, that's where incrementality and agile. I mean, that's what agile was made for, is getting the incrementality down and getting the cycles time up so that the failure is far, far less.
And so would you say, in fact, there was a question by Arunanshu Paul, that's the person from the audience. The person asked, how do you perceive the role of customer sentiment feedback loop in the process from design, code, test, rollout of mobile app? So is that what you're referring to as an iterative, is not just in the way we code, but also continue to get the customer sentiment on how they're...
Yeah, absolutely. Customers and their businesses have to get in a tight loop and learn together. So we have to learn from the customers have to learn about our value that we provide, and we have to keep that in a very tight loop and keep customers and business tightly together, and mobile is a great way to do that.
My question to all of you would be, should it be paranoia driven, or should it be leap of faith driven, that I'm going to create the next best experience, put it out there, let the customer give me feedback, and if it bombs, it bombs, but life will go on, like it's like an infinite game. How much leeway do you guys have from your management? Who would get fired if somebody says this sucks?
When you go to customers and you start to test propositions, you do, A/B test, you do a whole bunch of testing of ideas in the small, so you're not ruining your value proposition. You're really just learning with a portion of your audience. And we do that all the time, certainly in our world.
So you're doing prototyping or piloting is what you're referring to, right? The smaller subset.
Smaller subsets, limited roles, whatever you call it. You have to learn in an incremental way so you control your risk. Binary thinking about everybody or nothing is just not, if that's what you're coming with, don't enter the mobile game. It's not an all or nothing proposition. It's a continual evolution. So you got to take an evolutionary adaptive mindset in how do I provisionally learn in ways that are safe to the organization, that let us explore our value proposition, knowing that assurances we're going to deliver on an initial value proposition is not likely to be true. But value delivery over time is likely to come in places we didn't think it would be. So it's not so much did we hit our prediction, it's whether we got value, even especially in areas we did not predict. I know this is unsettling for business people, but this has been life in the 21st century business world.
Exactly.
It's an evolution, right? You start off thinking this is the value I'm going to bring, and over time it evolves and it changes. And absolutely, you incrementally test, you use a pilot group. We love using our own staff in our own organization to be the pilot group for new apps. We're rolling out one, which is a way for them to interact with a physician online, to text and predict maybe what kind of services they need. So we do a really good job of using ourselves as our own guinea pigs and our own population and learning from there. And then you adapt, you learn, and we've tried a couple that just didn't really take, even though we thought they would do well. And then we found other options that when we adopted We found our staff, as consumers as well of healthcare services, gave us feedback that this works out well. It's a continuous learning process. There's no formula that I could tell anybody, do X, Y, and Z, and you're always going to be successful. It's
But
do
there-
X, Y,
there
Z. Look where you did well, look where you didn't do well, adjust, be resilient, adapt, and then move forward.
But there are also some established patterns, right? I don't want to lose track of this. Sorry, Chris, right? The button in the corner that says leave is an established pattern. People know that that is something that's tested and users like, and you can actually kind of basically copy that idea when you're designing your application. You don't really need to go recreate the wheel to redesign every application and incremental. But for those who were paying attention a couple of years ago, that button was not red, right? So it started changing color because it became obvious based on the user experience and testing that people really need to find it, right? It's easy to go find. The Microsoft X in the corner of a screen didn't develop overnight, right? Somehow they discovered that, okay, well, this is the best way. We will teach our users how to basically close the screen and get out, right? And that became a standard, right? So the patterns do exist, and they can be copied, and they're tested well. And everybody knows that when you see an X on the screen, it means something, right? So we have to leverage the lessons learned and not try to recreate the wheel, and leverage those that are tried and true industry patterns inside our application design.
Absolutely. Definitely benefit from those who have made those mistakes in the past.
That's right.
And I just want to say, when we get the mobile experience right, it truly can be transformational. I know before we had the audience, Chris and I were talking about the telehealth experience, and COVID absolutely opened up that experience, but we'll never go back. I was explaining about my daughter who fell riding a bike. We were in a remote place. We were an hour and a half from a hospital. And without ever using telehealth before, we were able to get an appointment, get a prescription for some antibiotics because she had an infected arm, get to the pharmacy, get back, rather than spending 6 hours getting to a hospital, sitting in a merge, doing a zillion tests, being exposed to COVID because this was pre-vaccination, et cetera, we had a sort of 2-hour online experience between signing up and registering, talking to the nurse practitioner, uploading pictures of the infection, getting the antibiotics at a local pharmacy, getting back in time, to have a really, really nice evening. That's a transformational experience. And so when you really get these right, and I'm sure it wasn't all that mature because it was very early on in COVID and that learning just hadn't taken place, but it was an amazing experience. And truly, to your point, my bar is now really high and I'm never going back to an emergency room for something like an infection.
So last question for all of you, 10 words or less should be your response. What is that one thing that should change in you as a leader? You means individuals, you, who are leading the show in your respective organizations, so that the end result is a practical, predictable, and a scalable mobile-centric end user experience.
So I ensure that my staff feel comfortable with making that change.
Okay? Give them the immunity, give them the comfort that, yeah, go play with it.
Feel comfortable with changing, pivoting, trying something different, failing and learning and moving on.
All right, who'll take next?
Here, right? Create an environment where people can actually fail fast and learn.
Hey, you copied Chris's. Give me a new one.
I have many.
Okay. No, so this is a good one. In fact, good that two people are telling that means it's like a reinforcement of that thought, right? So Laura, Yeah, go ahead.
The failure rate in mobile is high, right? So you really have to kind of create and shield an environment that allows experimentation, productivity, and learning from this high failure rate in the mobile apps.
All right, very quickly, Laura, 10 words or less.
The other side of this same coin, I have to work on myself to let my team do that. So I have to remember not to try to direct the team and to really empower them.
Raghu.
I think incentivize the team to become co-owners for that app, even in terms of revenue.
All right, finally, Vince.
Try to be less demanding. There's a great quote attributed to Beethoven called, "Do you think I care about a wretched fiddle when the muse inspires?" So we have to care about our wretched fiddles.
What a great conversation today. So special thank to our panelists, Laura Moni, Vince Kellen, Raghuram Kravidi, Arif Martin, and Chris Panagopoulos. Thank you so much for, again, all the attendees who took the time to listen, and hopefully you got some good nuggets out of it. And thanks so much, Signity and Cobiton, for being our sponsor. I request everyone to please help and complete the survey, the feedback form, which will pop up when we end the webinar. So have a lovely rest of the day and keep doing the good work. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, bye-bye.
Stay well.